Christian CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world. If you haven't already, please hit the like button below and please hit the subscribe button below to keep up with everything we have going on here at CYInterview in Las Vegas and beyond. We greatly appreciate it. Today we bring you our past CYInterview with Ms. Band of Gold, singer Freda Payne. Here is that great CYInterview we had with the great singer.
You're on CYInterview.
I'm Christian. Featured columnist Jay Billstein is with me today on CYInterview. We welcome singer-actress Freda Payne. Her new album is titled Let There Be Love. Ms. Payne, thanks so much for joining us on CYInterview. This is such a delight. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. It really means a lot. So just to begin, I want to say about your new project, your new album, Let There Be Love. You have so much voice. Your voice and your energy are just phenomenal in this project. What does your latest project mean to you?
Well, it's a dream in a sense. It's a dream, and saying that means that I'm able to sing the kind of music that I kind of grew up with as a teen, and also as an adult, a young adult as well. Although most people would know me mostly and associate me with soul music, R&B music, and pop, but I am really, in all honesty, a jazz singer, and that's how I started out. And,
well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, and also the fact that I was able to do duets with some iconic artists who are still relevant and still in the industry and doing well and highly regarded in the industry as jazz artists. I'd have to say that it was a proud privilege to be able to work with them and have them work with me and sing with me. I mean, this will go on forever. This will always be here. It'll never disappear or go away. It's always going to be. When you record something and it's out there, whether it's vinyl or CD or on the internet and online, that's it. So at least I know I've done it. And not too many artists can, there are few of them that can say it. I know them very well, but not too many artists can say they've duetted with Johnny Matthysse and recorded with him. And of course I did that with Kenny Lattimore, who is a phenomenal R&B artist, and the great Dee Dee Bridgewater, who is one of our top female jazz vocalists of today, and then Kurt Elling, who is, oh my God, he's like he's just my example of something that I would just say, oh wow, he was just on the moon. I was just on the moon or above the moon with him, because in my estimation, he's a very, very great, I don't know. I love him. I just love him. That's all I got to say. I just love Kurt Elling. And
I'm going to
work with him as well.
I'm going to throw it to Jay in 1 second. I just want to mention before we continue on here and I ask my next question, to find out more about Freda's latest music album, of course, go to her website, FredaPayne.com. That's FredaPayne.com. You can find information on how you can purchase and listen to her latest music project, Let There Be Love. I just want to say one thing about this project as well, as I mentioned in my first question, but your voice just sounds so amazing. I mean, you've been around for numerous decades. You've been through some of the highs in music history. Do you do any voice exercises? How have you been able to preserve your voice?
Well, I don't know, just, it's always been there. It's never, I don't do drugs. I think I don't harm my larynx. I'm not a heavy drinker, although I drink, but wine and champagne, but mostly red wine I like. I don't do anything that I would say that some singers that we know of have done, where they have, like, maybe smoking all the time, and that can have an effect on your voice. Smoking or doing hard drugs. Certain drugs can affect the vocal cords. And that's about it. That's all I have to say about that.
That's great, Jay.
Freda, first of all, a pleasure speaking with you. Coming back to your album, and I know there was a single from it, what was it like working with Johnny Matthysse on You Can't Take That Away From Me, which was just an absolutely astonishing rendition?
Well, it was like I was like in a dream. It was sort of, oh my God, I'm singing with Johnny Matthysse. Even up to the time that he entered the Capitol building in Hollywood, I was thinking, oh my God, is he going to show up? Is he going to like sink out at the last minute? You know, and then when he walked into that room, it was like, oh, and then the rest was just pure, it was just ecstasy. It was like, oh God, he's somebody that I've admired, that's been around, having hit records himself since really since the early 60s, maybe even the late 50s. But I go back with him like, wow, so far back. And I've loved his music, loved and adored his vocals. And other than my sister friend, Denise Williams, and I think he also did a duet with Dion Warwick as well. But I've just always wanted, in the back of my mind, I kind of wish that I could do a duet with him. And finally, my producer, Rodrigo Rios, made it happen. And I'm just eternally grateful for that.
And so are we. And I'm sure so are your fans and lovers of music in general. You mentioned Dion Warwick. She has been on with us here on CYInterview a number of times. Another great artist. Have you ever worked with Dion, by the way?
We've been on the same shows in the UK, and we're friends. You know, we're friends. Acquaintances, and that's about it. She's lovely. I mean, I love Dion. I mean, Dion is the queen, you know.
Yeah, well, you both are music royalty. Going back to your roots and keeping things jazzy, Freda, what place do Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday hold for you as an artist?
Well, Billie Holiday, I first became aware of her when I was about 12 years old, and that was because I heard people talking about her. And then when I was 13 or 14, we acquired an album, a vinyl album, and that was called Lady in Satin. And that was the first time I ever heard her sing. And I was sort of, you know, I kind of like figured, I had in my mind singers like Edie Gourmet or singers like Ella Fitzgerald or Karen McRae, and I didn't hear that in her. I heard something else. I felt the pain, and her vocals had started to deteriorate, even though she was recording with a very plush orchestra. That was my impression as a 13-year-old. But I still knew that she was iconic and that she had captured the world, you know, with her style. She was a stylist, not so much as you would call a dynamite executioner of vocals. She was a stylist, and she became very famous. And one of my mentors, like when I was 14 years old, his name was Arthur Herzog Jr. Arthur Herzog actually was the writer of what's that song? Not Good Morning Heartache, but oh my God, I'm having a senior moment, guys.
We all do. So. But Arthur Herzog. So what of Arthur Herzog?
Arthur Herzog. God bless the child. I'm sorry. God bless the child. It was just momentarily. It just blanked out. God bless the child. His name is on the sheet music. He knew Billy. And that's how I heard, like, he would tell me stuff about her, but he wouldn't talk about her bad or anything like that. He basically would just say, you know, he works with her, and I think she also co-wrote it along with him.
Wow.
And I used to sing demos. I used to do demos with him. He used to have me sing some of his songs, demos. I did a couple of demos for him. And he was one of my early mentors.
And do you believe this is what kind of brought you forward in a jazz direction originally, or was there some other impetus which made jazz really your thing?
Well, that impetus would be someone like an Ella Fitzgerald. Also, I have to say, in all truth, Julie London.
Oh, really?
River. When I was 12 and 13, I remember I had a little radio that was right above my twin bed, above my head, and on a little platform, and I would play it late at night instead of going to sleep right away. I would listen to the radio. There was a station that played kind of like, I would say, jazz, more smooth jazz. They played artists like Chet Baker, like Julie London, June Christie, Chris Connor, people like that, and Carmen McRae, some Ella. They play some Ella, and some Dizzy Gillespie, and I would just listen. I first heard "Cry Me a River" sung by Julie London. That was the first. That's how I first heard that song, and other standards as well. You know, when I listened to Chet Baker, you know, and other artists who did some of the standards that they would do. That's how I started learning some of those jazz. I call them semi-jazz tunes. And then after that, I started to listen to Miles Davis. I was into Miles Davis when I was 13 and 14, and
wow.
The first album I got of his was Sketches of Spain, and that sent me into. I used to listen to that, and I would dance. I would start dancing around the living room, and because it made me fantasize I was in Spain. I mean, and little did I know that song was composed by a Spanish composer. You know, Concerto de Aranjuez is the name of it. And then the first time I went to Spain was in 1965 to Madrid, and I can remember looking out the window of the plane, and we were flying over over the terrain of Spain, and I was looking, and all of a sudden in my head I start hearing Sketches of Spain being played in my head, and it was just mercurical and magical. And then I was into Dizzy Gillespie, because a lot of times they would have him as a guest on some of the late night TV shows, of local artists who were appearing at clubs in Detroit, and Baker's Keyboard Lounge and places like that, or the Flame Show Bar, or other jazz clubs, mainly Baker's Keyboard Lounge. And Dizzy Gillespie would come on, and people like him.
And with this background that you had, you rightly point out, though, that probably the greatest fame that you achieved, at least till the present time, I would say over the last number of years, is being known more for R&B and soul and so forth, and charting that way. And I remember you had a song, and I think it's poignant to bring up now. I'm going to say this, and having seen recent pictures of you, this doesn't seem remotely possible. But 50 years ago, you had a song called Bring the Boys Home. Would you talk to us about that song, its importance at the time, and kind of compare those times to the world we're living in now?
Well, Bring the Boys Home turned out to be my second big hit record. It was a gold record for me, and it was 1971 when it was released. And at that time, we were at war with Vietnam, and it was under the Republican regime, and Richard Nixon was our president at the time. So when this song was recorded, when I did it, it was basically, I was with the team, the production team, the producers, Holland, Dozier, and Holland. Holland, Dozier, and Holland are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, by the way. And
Sure.
They were the guys who came from Motown, and they had just left Motown and formed their own label called Invictus. And Holland, Dozier, and Holland, they were known for making the initial major hits for the Supremes with Dinah Ross and Mary Wilson, Florence Ballard, and then it got to be Dinah Ross, Mary Wilson, and Cindy Birdsong before Diana left. But Holland, Dozier, and Holland also produced the major hits for the Four Tops, and and also Martha Reeves and the Marvelettes and the Vandellas. But anyway, they wrote a song for me called Band of Gold, and produced it on me when they had the Invictus label, and that was my first big hit. So that was the first time I busted onto the R&B charts with a hit record, top of the charts. And a year later, they were actually looking for a big hit follow-up, and that turned out to be Bring the Boys Home. So Bring the Boys Home came out in 71, and exactly 2 weeks after it was released, there was a notification from Washington, D.C. stating, and it was sent to the record label, to their offices, and it said, that song, Bring the Boys Home, will not be played in South Vietnam due to the fact that it will be giving aid and comfort to the enemy. And we were highly shocked and surprised about that, because in actuality, it was the opposite. It was the opposite. And over the many decades and years, how many times has a former Vietnam vet walked up to me and thanked me for recording that song? They said because that song helped them get through.
I believe it. I believe it. And you bring up, rightly so, Band of Gold, which is your absolutely monster hit from 1970, and it has become an absolute enduring classic. And I just wondered, I know you've been questioned about this many, many times, but do you have any updated take on what makes that song so popular?
Well, I have to tell you in all honesty, I really don't know, but I think the answer is because this has come back to me many times from people here and there, and they want to know, was it because the guy was gay and he couldn't do anything with her and he walked out, and then again, the other opinion would be, no, she was frigid. She wasn't ready to have sex. And everybody has their own interpretation, and it's what makes them love a song, or it's what resonates with each person according to their situation or what they imagine it to be.
I certainly believe that, because, the first time the song really resonated with me, I know it came out in 1970, but I was 12 years old in 1972, and I was on vacation with my family in Miami Beach, of all places. and I was sitting in the back of the car, and Band of Gold came on, and as a 12-year-old, I remember it being one of the songs that actually first made me sad. You know, I used to listen to a lot of music and rock and so forth. Didn't really, but it made me sad in a way. It touched me, and then later on, of course, I bought the single, and I couldn't stay. It had an addictive quality to it. As I understand, though, the lyrics were changed to make the song shorter. And it really did point to perhaps some kind of difficulty in between this man and this woman that didn't really have to do with sexual orientation or didn't have to do with the inability to perform, but something earlier in the relationship may have gone awry that led to this. Is that your understanding? Was the song actually tightened at a certain point in time for commercial airplay, and does that lead to some of the interpretations?
Well, yeah, it was. It was short, and it was specifically shortened for radio airplay because they had to be very careful about how long a song was, and especially getting it to be played on certain R&B and pop stations as well.
Yeah, it was what an absolute monster hit. Chris?
Freda, do you think the music era that you grew up in and were part of at the beginning of your career, the 60s and 70s, were the best times in music history?
I do agree. I would say 60s, 70s, and I would even include some of the 80s.
Sure.
Because as you remember, I mean, even the 70s, look at all the acts that came out in the 70s. I mean, come on. You have Earth, Wind, and Fire. You've got Donna Summer, the disco era, Gloria Gaynor. It was like, there was a lot of great acts, a lot of great music that came out in the 70s. And the 60s as well.
And, of course, some of that was yours, of course.
Yeah, some of it was mine. Uh-huh. Yeah, mine like 1970, 71, and 72, somewhere in that area.
Moving forward on that, I wanted to say a few other things, and I'm going to throw it back to Jay. Your sister Sherry was also a singer. What was that like to have a sister who was also a singer, also a performer, also an entertainer? Did that help you both when you were both trying to accomplish goals?
Well, Sherry started, first of all, Sherry didn't jump into the industry, the business, until, let me see, about around the late like around 1970, 69, around there. And that's when I first I signed with Invictus in 68, and then we started recording in 69, and then Band of Gold came out in 1970. Sherry didn't get into the industry until she was like in her mid-20s, and she had gone to Michigan State. See, I never went to college. I went directly from high school at the age of 6. I graduated at 16, and 18 I went to New York. Sherry went on to Michigan State, graduated, and then she started teaching. She taught school for a couple of years, and I don't think she was very happy doing that. And then one day, I was in Detroit, back in Detroit at home, and I was on the phone with Eddie Holland, who was of Holland, Dozier & Holland, of course. And I was on the phone with him, and Sherry was at our piano playing some of her original compositions. And he said, "Who's that playing?" And I said, "That's my sister Sherry." He said, "Can she sing?" I said, "Yeah, she can sing. She can sing as good as me." He said, "Well, put her on the phone." So I put Sherry on the phone. And next thing I know, they're talking, and she had already started writing songs. Sherry's very, very creative, very creative and adventurous. That's just her, period. Today she writes screenplays and scripts and stuff like that. As it's a hobby, but she's serious too about it. Some of them have actually been put on stage. They have been launched on stage, a couple of her plays. But anyway, back to Detroit in 1969. And so he invited Sherry to come to the office, the Invictus offices, to audition, and she did. And they signed her up and put her in a group called the Glass House. So she was in the Glass House, and she wrote a song. She had a minor R&B hit back then called Crumbs Off the Table. She recorded it, and also a lady by the name that was also on the label by the name of Laura Lee recorded it. And it became a hit, back then. It became a hit. And next thing I know, she was doing that. So around 1973, when the Supremes, Diana had already left. Diana, I think, left around 1969 or 1970. And and the lady who replaced Diana Ross was Jean Terrell. And then Jean Terrell had actually came out and with the Supremes and had a few hits herself, top hits. And then Jean Terrell left in 73, and that left Mary Wilson, who at the time was the leader of the group. And Mary was anxiously, desperately trying to get a lead singer, because Mary wasn't doing lead back then. She was still, the background, but she was also being the original founder of the Supremes. It was her, Motown and Barry, allowed Mary to be sort of like the leader of the group. So it just turned out that Lamont Dozier, who was also a part of Holland, Dozier and Holland, who was a friend of ours, I went to school with Lamont, and Lamont had heard about Sherry and that she could sing, and he had heard her sing, and he suggested to Mary that she should, hire Sherry. So that's what happened. Mary hired Sherry as a lead singer. Sherry signed a contract with Motown as a lead singer, and she stayed with the group for 3.5 years. And also, Sherry recorded on Motown as a Supreme, and also also Motown recorded Sherry and Susie Green, who became also a member of the Supremes after Cindy Birdsong left. And they recorded an album on their own. It was called Partners. One side was just Sherry, and the other side was just Susie, and they were doing all their own original compositions. So Sherry still performs.
I'm sorry.
She still performs to this day, by the way. And a group called Former Ladies of the Supremes, and that's with Joyce Vincent Wilson, Sherry. And let's see, Joy, Sherry. Oh, and Susie Green. Susie, who was also a Supreme replacement back in the 70s.
I just want to thank you so much for the amazing here and enjoyable, and one of the greatest stories I think we've ever heard on my interview.
Oh, thank you.
Goes,
that too.
And Mary Wilson was a past CYInterview guest. Unfortunately, she passed away earlier this year. But thank you so much for telling that story. I think anybody who is a fan of the Supremes or a fan of your music or a fan of your sister's music would really enjoy that story. That was phenomenal. That's
the truth, honey. That's
Jay?
The truth. Blow by blow, word by word.
Jay?
Freda, might we see you in Las Vegas anytime soon? CYInterview is Las Vegas-based, and I know your fans would love the opportunity to see you here. Might there be anything in the coming months?
Well, no. I had originally had a booking for the Italian-American Supper Club, but then we decided...
very well.
Yeah, we decided to not do it now and put that aside until a later date.
Got you. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, really. I'll say this, really coming of age in the 1970s, as I told you, the impact that Band of Gold had on me back in 72. I had two crushes on singers. One was Olivia Newton-John, but before Olivia Newton-John, there was Freda Payne. So it's not often I get to meet somebody who I had a crush on, and it was a well-deserved crush. You are a phenomenal artist, and you're also just exceptionally beautiful and a very, very nice and hospitable person. And we thank you so much for being on CYInterview.
Oh, you're welcome. And also, my book is coming out. It's going to be released November the 2nd.
What's the title of your book?
Band of Gold, a memoir by Freda Payne and Mark Biko.
Well,
we're going to have you back for it.
We're going to have you back to talk about your memoirs. Well, I did want to ask you one last question. What do you hope people take away from your music?
Just the fact that it made them feel good, and that it was healing in some way, and brought some joy to their life.
Well, I think you've definitely brought joy to me and Jay tonight here on CYInterview.
Absolutely.
So we'll leave it at that. So for singer, actress Freda Payne, featured columnist Jay Bilstein, and CYInterview, I'm Christian.